Hey, everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And today we are honored to have on our guest, Desta Barnabe. Desta is a writer, researcher, and investigator of the hidden forces shaping our reality. With a background in channeling, remote viewing, and consciousness studies, she has spent years uncovering the deeper mechanics of psychic abilities, paranormal protection, and the unexplained disappearances that defy conventional logic. And of course, Desta has co-authored a number of books with Grant Cameron, and is just an amazing person. So welcome, Desta.
Thanks, James.
You're like a hidden gem. There's a saying. There's always uh, an extraordinary woman behind every man, and in the ufological sense, you're always supporting and assisting Grant Cameron, which is how I became familiar with you. So in that regard, that's quite a bio. So how did you get involved in the UFO and consciousness studies aspect of all this stuff?
Well, I kind of grew up, I would say, in that arena. When I was really, really young, I knew about UFOs and paranormal stuff. My grandma's house was haunted, and so I heard stories all the time from her of the things that were happening in her house. And my aunt was reading tarot cards and stuff, and my grandma taught me how to do that. She was a medium and held seances in her basement and stuff. So I was exposed to that kind of stuff my whole life when I was really, really young. So I was always interested in it, having, other instances in my house and weird things happening as I was growing up and stuff. So I always knew about it. I was always interested. I had all the books that, you could get in the 70s kind of thing, all the like Raymond Moody books, Life Between Life and Life Between Lives and all those things when I was younger. And yeah, so I was kind of like drawn to it. And I've always been interested, I guess, all the time. I was seeing UFOs at my grandma's cottage, I think, when I was like probably 10 years old or something like that. The same Charlie Red Star, actually, in the same.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
my grandma saw Charlie Red Star in 1972 or four when Grant was seeing it. She actually saw it in Win. So we're from Winnipeg, same with a Grant. That's not how I know him actually, but I'm from Winnipeg as well as Grant. And yeah, my grandma was always told me about the big red ball that came down her street in Winnipeg, but it also she said that was a big red ball that she didn't say plasma, but it would be what we would call plasma ball now. That just looked like it was dripping with sparks and it was like made out of fire kind of thing. And it followed her down the street at our cottage, she told me once. And she jumped in the ditch and tried to like hide in the ditch to get away from it. And she said when it saw her jump in the ditch, it like went and sat on top of her, like, and waited. And she was really scared. And I asked her if she tried to like communicate telepathically with it or anything, and she said she didn't. She was just really scared. But we would sit on the deck when I was, really young, and she would just say, "They always come over the water. Just think about them, and they'll come. It's always red balls. They'll come." So every night we had a cottage right on top of Lake. I always forget if it's Lake Winnipeg or Lake Manitoba, but it's by Grand Beach, and we had a cottage on the lake, so we were able to just sit on the front deck and like look over the lake, and that's what we would do for all night. Every night that we were there is just look for UFOs. So I've been in it for a long time, but I didn't meet Grant until about 2015 in Vancouver, actually, right after I moved to Vancouver. He was on that disclosure tour with Dolan, wasn't
I
Richard
remember that. I remember that. I think that guy Mark, I forget it. I know exactly what tour you're talking about.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was like it was Steve Bassett, Paul Hellier, Richard Dolan was on most of it, but he didn't go to Vancouver. And they were playing the Travis Walton movie at the time. And who else was on it? Well, I just remember, oh yeah, there was someone else I'm forgetting. I don't know. But I saw him at that conference right when I moved to Vancouver. And I basically moved there. Well, I moved there for kind of, for work, for a job, but I also moved there just thinking like I have to get out of Winnipeg and find people that are interested in these kind of things, because none of my friends ever were. And so I was always investigating stuff and thinking about UFOs and watching all these, shows and documentaries and trying to do psychic stuff and telekinesis. Of course, when you're like a kid and everything, and none of my friends were interested. I wasn't criticized or anything about it. Everyone just thought I was really weird or called me a witch or something like that. But I wasn't like, ousted from my friends or my family or anything, thankfully, because of it. But I wasn't in a like-minded community, like obviously most people, especially in the 70s and 80s and 90s, right? So I went to Vancouver and I was so happy. I joined a bunch of like CE5 groups, the big one out there, and a couple of UFO groups and paranormal, anything that I could figure out. And yeah, I ended up going to the conference, and then Grant stood up there and said, "I'm from Winnipeg." And I thought, oh my God, I just left from Winnipeg. It was like within a month or something like that. And I thought, holy shit, the main guy here is actually from Winnipeg. I didn't think anyone in Winnipeg knew anything about any of this. So I went up after the conference, after his talk, and talked to him, and yeah, got to know him, and was going to the UFO meetups because he had his own UFO meetup group in Winnipeg, and that I had never heard of. And yeah, so I just started talking to him and said, why don't we get a YouTube channel? Why aren't you talking about all this stuff? Why don't we get a camera and start filming you and start putting videos? And why don't we start writing more books and doing, I didn't know how to do anything. So I, had to teach myself how to do everything because it was so exciting to have someone else who knew a bunch of stuff about this, this field. And I didn't think his stuff was out there. And it was like in 2015, I was even new to YouTube. I don't know when it really, got really popular, but I just was, on YouTube all the time in 2015. So I was like, you don't even have a YouTube channel. That's where everyone goes. So
Yeah.
we just kind of started it at that point.
Yeah, and so funny because if you would have met him like 10 years before, he was not into the consciousness stuff.
Yes.
And I saw his transition uh into the consciousness stuff, and I was like pleasantly surprised. And I was hoping like, oh man, I hope this isn't like a fling and he just turns back.
Yeah.
But to the contrary, I mean he's, again, I always call him like a conduit for the phenomena because he's just like tapping into something. And
Yeah, absolutely.
which you know about a little bit about if with your background in channeling. And so just so you mentioned CE5, or were there any kind of notable CE5 experiences you had out there?
Um, no, I don't think any of them. They were like monthly, and I was there for 2 or 3 years. So we went out quite often. It was cloudy. It's in Vancouver. It's
Yeah.
cloudy quite often, or raining and canceled quite often. But I don't remember, not anything really big for sure. I don't remember anything, no.
Yeah. Was there anything that prompted your like um I don't know how to say like commitment into the field? Like was there any like one or a few particular instances that drew you in particular?
Absolutely. So I was interested in all of it, whether it was like Bigfoot or UFOs or aliens or, ghosts or whatever for my whole life. But in 2012, I had a really crazy experience that I still think about all the time because I'm still kind of thinking because I realized that it was a mindset that I had as to why it happened. And that's the part that you don't see all the time on C5s or really close up encounters. But I do know that it was because of this mindset. So yeah, I had a big upheaval in my life, basically, and and I was going to Europe for the first time by myself. So I was going to go like with a backpack, traveling I'd never been to Europe before, and I was going by myself, and I had never traveled by myself. I was 40 years old. It was in 2012, and like I said, my ex and I had just split up. So we were going to sell the house. I just lost my job. So I didn't have a job. I didn't have a boyfriend anymore. I thought I was going to lose my house. Like I thought we were going to sell the house. And so I wasn't working full time, at a job at the time. And so, I just said, I'm going to Ireland. I just want to go to Ireland.
Yeah.
And I ended up going, and I didn't have a return ticket. So I thought I was going to be gone for about 6 months, but I'd never been there. And So 5 nights before I left, I was obviously really, really nervous and like not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing what it was like out there, how much it was going to cost. If I was going to, I have a bad back. So I was like carrying a 50-pound backpack by myself for an unlimited amount of time. What's going to happen if something happens to me and I don't know anyone? And how does the phones work out there? Or am I going to get internet? It was 2012. So I didn't have a smartphone or anything. And so I was in a really weird place, but I was trying to go for long walks all the time just to get stronger because I was going to be walking all the time with my backpack. So I'm a night person. So I would be like 12 or 1 in the morning and I would decide to go for a walk because it was summertime. It was July. And, it was a lot cooler in Winnipeg as well. So at 12 or 1 in the morning every day, I would just go for an hour long walk. And the 5 nights before I left for this trip, I had really close up sightings and experiences and crazy things happening, different ones every day, but every night, as soon as I left my house to go for a walk, I would be seeing things. And one of them was a really close up one where it came and it was sitting on top of the elementary school right beside, right on my walk. So I was about 25 feet away from it or whatever. And it was a gigantic, ball of light just sitting there. And it had come from a super, super, super long distance away. And I was just thinking the whole time, like, is this drone? That's what I just kept thinking the whole time. In 2012, I didn't even really know what a drone was, but I just kept thinking, like, what is this? What could this be? And I thought, like, how do drones even work? Is there some kid with a remote control, like sitting somewhere that can see that I'm here? Because obviously no one was around at 1 in the morning. And like, did they see me from super far? And then how are they making this thing go? And why is it stopping? And what is it doing? And I just kept thinking, like, I thought right away it was a UFO. And I said, if you're a UFO, come here. Right.
Yeah.
And it instantly came. And I just thought, oh, that's really weird. And then I thought, what could this be? And I never thought it was UFO the rest of the time, but it was just like sitting so close to me. And I started having all these like, thoughts in my head and stuff. And I didn't, even though I knew about UFOs at the time, I didn't know that much about them. So, and the ones that I had seen would be the ones really small bits of light, really far away. And so this one was just like, I didn't really think it was a real UFO because, I just couldn't believe it. So I just kept
Yeah.
thinking, like, what is this thing? And then I had, things in my head. I had the like Oz effect happen where I was just like frozen in time. My ears got all plugged. I couldn't like move. And I was like getting really scared and wanted and thought, like, am I crazy being out here at 1 in the morning and there's this thing here? Like, just say this is a UFO and it like takes me and no one, I was going to take a cab to the airport in a couple of days. And I thought no one would know if I'm gone because everyone basically expects me to be gone for, up to 6 months or something. If this is a real UFO and it takes me away, no one's going to know. No one's going to be looking for me.
Yeah.
So I thought, should I be scared? Should I be walking by myself at 1 in the morning? Like, should I run? And I was like slowly working myself up to want to run when that thing happened where my ears just like, all the crickets and everything stopped. My ears felt like I was underwater or something, like my ears were plugged, and then I couldn't move. And I was trying to like fight out of the position of like it sounds the only way that I can explain it is like the old cartoons where, I don't even know what cartoon it is, but like the guy, I don't know if it was like Yosemite Sam or something, like before he ran, he would do some like arm gesture and then run that way. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like what it felt like. I was stuck and I was about to run, but my body was like experiencing time in like a millisecond to millisecond to millisecond. It was like the slowest, most painful, like I was just trying to get my muscles to run and I couldn't. And it was just like it was taking an eternity. It felt like it was a month that I was just like all my muscles were like tensing up to run that way. And I didn't know what was happening and I couldn't hear anything. And all I know I just had that second decided to run when that thing happened and I couldn't move. And then finally, after, what seemed like a really long time that I was able to move, I don't have any memory of anything else happening. But the second that I was like released and, able to, sprint off that way. I only got the second that I was like let go, at the exact second, and I heard Greer talk about this many years later, and that's why I remember this. The second I was released, the thing moved, and it started, instead of sitting on top of the school where it was, it started going the opposite way, which was where it came from. So it did like a 90-degree turn, and it was going back, east or whatever. It was going back that way. So I could see that there was like a red flashing light behind it, but all I was seeing was the shiniest, craziest, most brilliant, bright, white, brilliant light, like a diamond on top of the school. But the second I was able to run, it started going that way. And I ran, and I only ran a couple steps of like whatever the momentum of my muscles letting me go, or however you say, I ran 2 stops, and I instantly was like the most heartbroken, bawling my eyes out, because I don't know why. So I thought I was in my head, all I was thinking is like, don't leave me behind. So I turned around, and then I started chasing it. So I started chasing the 2 blinking red lights at the back, like at the back of it when it was going back that way. And I chased it for blocks and blocks, bawling, 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 and like heartbroken that it was leaving me, even though I wasn't, so it was like such a really weird thing. But anyway, so a lot of weird things like that happened. That was the most like emotional, I guess, or the most connected that I was of all the different things that I saw in those 5 days. But yeah, so after that night, especially, I was like, holy, something crazy or than I thought, of just a cool light in the sky, or like an alien coming down to talk to you or something. I thought like, oh my God, like what is this? And like I have to, deal more with this, or really start, not just be like interested, but it's like the story is you just get obsessed. I was like
Yeah.
obsessed after that, because I was like, what did that, and what were those things? And mostly it's just like the liminal space that I was in, which I could never really explain, but it was like I was in such a weird place, like just about to lose my house, my, partner, my job. So I was just like so, like, and I was so nervous to go by myself too. And it was like I was 40, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta like go and start dating again. And am I gonna live in Winnipeg? How am I gonna, I don't have a job anymore. How am I going to get money to get another house and a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. I was like in such a crazy, mental state. And I'm sure that's what must have triggered it. It took me many years to kind of come to that conclusion, but that's the thing that really made me turn. So then when in 2015, when I got the chance to go to Vancouver to work with my friend, that's when I met Grant. And when I was young, all I thought everything was ghosts, basically. Like I was scared. I had a nightlight on my whole life until I was 40. Until this event, like in 2012, everything that sighting for me changed everything in my whole life. And it went from me being like terrified of like a ghost, me seeing a ghost in the night for some strange reason, sleeping with a night on forever, to like being so sad they left me that I slept with complete black every night with my eyes wide open, just saying, please come back. Like all I thought about. So it was a total reversal. I thought I didn't even care about like spirits or like whatever. I just thought, whatever. I just want like the ETs have to come back, like come back and get me or whatever.
Yeah. And in retrospect, that, since this happened back then, I mean, to this day, do you have any kind of like inclination or impression on what those entities might have been?
I've gone through so many different, just even in that time, in
Right.
this 13
Uh,
years or whatever that is. Like, so yeah, every 2 or 3 years, I would have answered
yeah.
a different thing. I'm kind of like in the camp now where I think things are more of a simulation. So I would more, instead of thinking there was because that was one of the big things that I always couldn't let go of, is like, was there a being in that ship?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I could never tell how big it was when it was over the like when it was in front of me, it was just so bright. It was like the brightest light. And I was just thinking, like, trying to make I have a really bad memory. So I was like trying to make myself remember, like, how big is this light? You can't tell. And it came from so far away. When it came, it was a dot. It was a dot in the sky that was just like doing this really weird bobbing thing. And I thought, oh, that's not, because I've been, looking for UFOs my whole life. So I kind of, you could tell when it's a satellite, right? It's just going straight. And I thought, oh, that's weird. So if you're a UFO, come here. And the second I said it, it turned a 90-degree
Yeah.
and started coming towards me. I was like, oh, that's kind of creepy. What could that be? And then when it was sitting there, I was just like, okay, how big is it? 6 feet, 20 feet? I couldn't tell because it was so bright and so big. I couldn't tell. But when it turned and it started going back, and I saw the red blinking lights at the back, I could tell how big it was. And it seemed to be the size of like an SUV, like a big car kind of thing. And I thought, like, so is there two seats in there? Like, is there two beings in there, like side by
Yeah.
side, like in a car? And that's all I kept thinking for years, is like, what was in there? Like, does someone somewhere else just tell these things? I didn't know, again, even drones, I hardly knew what a drone was. So I, wasn't really thinking it was some like remote controlled operated thing, but I was thinking, like, was there something piloting that thing? Because it said to me in my head, like, we're not gonna, like, don't worry, we're not gonna do anything to you. Like, don't be afraid. It said, like, don't be afraid. And then I just thought, why would I ever think that? I didn't think it came from that. I just thought, why would I think that? And never for a second did I think it came from that until years later, right? It said, and then I thought, like, what is it doing? Like, I wonder what it's doing, because it seems like it's staring at me. It seems like it felt like it was doing something to me, but I did think it was a drone. I thought there was a kid somewhere. I wasn't convinced the whole thing, but when I thought that, I wonder what it's doing, or like, it seems like it's looking at me, or like talking to me, or like doing something to me. In my head again, I got, we're scanning you. We're scanning you. Don't be afraid. We're just scanning you. And I thought, why would I ever think that? What a weird thing. But I really thought it was just me. So I just brushed it off, like remembered that I thought that, but brushed it off. So I was like obsessed for a long time, thinking, was there like two guys in there, like two beings in there? And then how did they see me? Because it was like a tiny, like a grain of rice. And then it came all the way from a zillion miles away, or wherever. It took like 15 minutes for it to come on top of the school. It was just a bit of light. And then, so I was just like, so it couldn't have seen me, like thinking of like physics on this, on the earth kind of thing. It's just like, well, it didn't see me. It can't see that far. So like, what was it? And yeah, but again, so now I would say, and then I like kind of thought maybe it was like my future self coming to wake me up, when I was interested in retrocausation. Like, this is like a
Yeah.
ping from, me going back in time, and it's like a loop that's trying to literally loop me into the UFO field, So maybe that was the thing that made me go in. But yeah, so now I don't know, but I would say it's like, whatever it is, for sure there's like things like it's an I don't even know if I would even say entity anymore, but it's like an intelligence. It's like an intelligence for sure. Whether it's like a being from another planet, I don't really believe that at all anymore, but I would still say it's like, is it a ping from the simulation, and it's just the same intelligence that, like people would, it's natural to think now, but that, whether you see your dead grandma come to you in the night, or whether, like, whatever the thing is, like, of all the paranormal things that you see, it's probably just that one thing, that, that intelligence. And whether that's the intelligence on the outside of the simulation, dropping in to just say hi, or to like reflect us, that's kind of where I think I would probably say I'm at this point. It's probably just that, something to make me go, holy shit, like, I better start, like, what could that possibly be, to rope me in more. Whether that's like a good thing, at the end of John Keel's life, he certainly wasn't happy about being roped in his whole life, because he didn't really
Yeah.
think he got anywhere with it. But I think it's so fascinating. I think that I'm excited to be roped in, if that's what it is. And if it is a simulation, then I did it myself. So it's like, so how could you, I don't think it's a specific being that I could be happy with or mad at kind of thing. I think it's whether it's a reflection of my own, energy, mental energy, emotional energy, or, I would say it's more something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from that because during my trauma-induced out-of-body experience that simulated like an NDE, I was face to face with this light entity, like a light being, and I had some knowing in my awareness that this being was not at all separate from me,
Mm,
right? And I still contemplate that, right? But it's just like one of those things. It certainly that experience certainly wasn't an alien of any kind, and not or extraterrestrial intelligence, as far as I know. Um,
so what happened? Trauma induced? So like
yeah,
what?
I was in a car accident, and
Oh,
I had this whole thing. It simulated a little bit like an NDE. Like there was this angelic orchestra, um, and the being, and then it it's a whole story basically that I've talked about in a few interviews, but that the following day is when I had the kind of very close proximity, UFO encounter with these entities that look like Nordics, right? Which is so cliche, that had this telepathic lock on, and but there was a physical craft, like it looked dark, very dark gray, and it was shaped like a hexagon, and it had the buzzing like like an amp,
mhm.
and that was a whole encounter my family saw and stuff. But that encounter the following day seemed different, much different than the one that was the trauma induced out of body experience with the light beam.
Hmm.
And that's I'm always still trying to sort that out.
Yeah.
Always like seeing different parts of the experience, and uh because again there were even prior to those two experiences that happened in succession, there's an experience 2 months before where I saw a fireball in broad daylight,
Mm.
right? And I saw the fireball after this whole thing of synchronicities. Yeah, we'll talk about it off air sometime, but
Okay.
where I had seen the fireball in the sky is exactly the vintage point I had when I was looking down at the accident 2 months later.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that for years.
Whoa.
And it was actually, I was describing the story to Dr. Nolan one day, and I was like, holy shit, that the exact point that I saw the fireball UFO in the sky um, was my vantage point when I was looking down at the accident after that whole experience.
Wow.
And it's like, I don't like, what does that even mean? Right? Like, I get very much like interstellar vibes, like as in the movie with he's like
Yeah.
looking at reality through this thing, and it's like, yeah, I mean that kind of experience is paradigm shifting, right?
Yes.
It's like it's beyond the paradigm shift of there's aliens and they're visiting us from another planet, right? Like I always usually describe this process of like, even as somebody who's an experiencer, where if you take everything at face value initially, you're like, oh my God, UFOs. The first thing you think culturally is aliens, right? Or extraterrestrials. And then you have the experience and you think, well, actually, it really wasn't like that. No, for not for everybody, right? People do have such experiences, and it seems more face value extraterrestrial in some cases, but you know, again, we're talking about a variety of experiences. You have the free experiencer study, and some of the experiences you're like, well, not, that really wasn't aliens, right? And it didn't seem to be extraterrestrial from some other planet. And then you start asking, wait, what actually was it? And like, how is it connecting with my mind? And
Mhm.
not only connecting telepathically, but the interaction was shaped by your intention and awareness, and even subconscious framing of reality,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
right? So it's like, what the hell does that mean, right? Is it, I mean, it goes beyond the idea of like, even say, super advanced extraterrestrials with like 1,000 years of advanced psychotronic capability, right? Where, psychotronics can influence your consciousness um, through frequencies and radionics and make you see or hear different things. But this is a whole other order of capability, right? Where like it's feeding you reality in real time.
Mhm.
So uh at some point it's like what actually is this, right? And then is it connected to the other experiences? And is it all one thing? And you get into those deeper questions, and then ultimately it leads you to the nature of reality, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
That's
and,
the most fascinating part, I think, is exactly that. It's that if you are like us, so someone who's had many different small, seemingly completely unrelated experiences, paranormal, strange experiences your whole entire life, everyone seems so individual and so random. So every time something happens, like, and I always see that it comes in groups. So like
mm,
all of a sudden it's just like, oh my God, I saw a UFO tonight. And then the next night, something else weird, I have some crazy hypnagogic thing. And then the next night, there's like some apport that appears on the
yeah,
carpet. And then the next night, something else happens. And it's like, oh my God, everything is so insanely, completely different. Nothing seems related at all. And then nothing happens for like another entire year. And then you keep thinking about what those things are. Every book you read, you change your mind a little bit. If you ever see a different researcher with a different opinion, you're like, oh, I never thought of that. That's what it is. But then just wait. Like just wait for another year and just wait for the next thing that happens because I can't, I change my mind so often. And I always think, oh my God, this has to be something close to it. Or I used to at least think that. And then, yeah, I think that for me, it's really like psychedelic experiences that really make me think there is nothing, like I always get the sense that we are so far away from what the real truth and what real reality really is that this is so like elementary
yeah,
school and we it's just like oh I have a body and I have to go to work and then I have to and it seems so trivial everything that we do until you have one of these like epiphanies or moments, whether it's a paranormal moment or a psychedelic moment or something where you actually go, whoa, this is like all the crazy stuff that we spend all our time worrying about and concerning ourselves with, and like how to just live life and pay your bills and all that stuff is like nothing to do at all with how things really work. And I don't, and every time you read a new book or see a new interview or something, you're like, oh yeah, that could be it. But in reality, once are researching that and see that over and over and over again for decades, then you're like, okay, I know that even though this seems like I got it finally, and this seems like this is a good explanation to tie all these things together, I know that now in a year or two, I'm going to think this is like, this is so elementary and I'm going to, you're on to the next thing. So I think it's exactly that. It's like as science kind of progresses, as new ideas kind of get out there and float around, as new, as we read new books or hear new interviews or whatever, it's just like, it's like a zillion piece puzzle that you're just trying to get one tiny little thing and it makes it seem like it's stuck in there and now you're a little bit closer, but I don't think we're anywhere. I don't think we're closer at all. And I think it's going to be the same thing for sure in our lifetimes, that this is so completely like nothing, even the words that we're using has no like meaning to how things really are. It's just fun for us. It's just like, I have that vision or whatever. Sometimes it's just like we're little ants and we're just like little ants dressing up in clothes, going to work, doing all these little things, but it's just like what real reality is behind us is so like we are tiny little ants, just like, I don't know, like on a little stage and pretending we know what's going on and talking to each other and guessing things. And it's just like real reality is nothing at all like how we, even at our, most grandiose imaginations, we can't fathom it, I don't think.
right. And that's like very much as the Donald Hoffman kind of idea that we're programmed and we're designed biologically evolutionary to survive, right?
Mhm.
Survive, procreate. I mean, uh, our consciousness does seem to be evolving, but it's so gradual. And if you think, if you contemplate that we're in like an infinitude, right? Like an infinite reality, that is, as far as we're concerned, timeless, right? Like we experience time linearly, but clearly, if even if you go with the Big Bang theory and the universe is like 15 billion years old, I mean, like we can't even fathom that kind of linear concept.
Mhm.
Forget about multiverse. Um, Even if we're talking about dimensions, right? Like the idea of interdimensional comes up, and kind of like the idea that we're in flatland, right? We're like in this 2D reality, and we are perceiving things in 3D, but allegedly, right, there's a fourth, fifth, sixth, all these other dimensions, and it's not just like, oh, it's, I mean, if you really contemplate the dimension thing, right? Like we still perceive things in like 3D, and if you want to include time, there's like 4D, fourth dimensional space. But and but still, even with our knowledge of that, fourth and fifth dimensional have spatial dimensions, right?
Mhm.
It's not just like, oh, there's some dimension somewhere. No, it's a spatial dimension, and it's here all the time, and we're just not perceiving it, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's what some of these intelligences could be, in my opinion, is like if there's like what people call an angel or a light being or those kind of non-human intelligence entities that are, their natural reality is in that fourth dimensional spatial space or fifth dimensional spatial space. And they're like, lowering their frequency to like interact over here, right? Um, it brings all kinds of questions like what is the actual reality that these non-human intelligence experience,
Mhm.
right? It's just like we don't even have the first inclination other than I mean, one really cool thing that came out was like the telepathy tapes, right? I mean, and even for like 3D, 4D space, or however you want to say that consciousness, it's scratching the surface, but
Mhm.
the reality of it is still absolutely incredible and amazing to us. And like the consensus reality is not quite there yet, like
Mhm.
getting there, right? The interest that people have in things like the telepathy tapes is an indicator that like, okay, we're kind of like moving along, seemingly, right? Like dragging everybody with us.
Yeah.
Uh, but in the way that telepathy was described in the telepathy tapes was exactly how I had experienced my telepathic lock on with non-human intelligence. So I thought that was a fascinating thing. And but to me, it's even more fascinating that the telepathy thing between from human to human, because like you can always like just give agency to the phenomenon and non-human intelligence, the phenomena, whatever you want to call it, and say, oh well, they facilitated it
Mhm.
somehow, maybe through technology, or they're like ultra psychic just by nature, and they facilitated that telepathic experience, even though when it happens, it's absolutely natural, right?
Mhm.
Um, it feels so familiar, but um from human to human, there's no like excuse of some out there doing it. It's just
Exactly.
us.
Exactly.
So that is, to me, that's way more fascinating, right? That you know regular human beings are, I mean, nobody's regular, right? I don't mean to say it like that, but just like your everyday ordinary human being is like so much more ingrained in reality and capable and has the ability to interact with reality, right?
Mhm.
Um, and somehow that this freaking thing of UFOs brings all this up, right? Like, because it's this physical object that
Yeah.
comes into your reality and is demonstrating all this, is showing you like a metaphysical reality in a sense.
Mhm.
Um, so, after your experiences, uh, how did that change, after the big experience, I guess I should say, how did that change your trajectory in maybe research and experience, if it did at all?
Um, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it was just a couple, I had a lot of really weird things happen after that 5-day experience. And I started shortly after that channeling. So I don't know that thing. So it's like you never know again. And I always think of the retrocausal part
Yeah,
of this is just
yeah,
like, I don't know if I made the UFO be there to make myself be more interested and focus more on these topics. And that was going to, now that kind of like makes more sense to me, but who knows? It doesn't matter why. But yeah, so I started channeling after that. And soon after that, very soon after that, like I think that trip that I went on, I didn't know it was ever channeling. So I wasn't calling it anything. I was just thinking that I was just messing around with something that you know, it was talking to my higher self. And I was like writing little passages of things that I thought when I meditated that I would just get messages, but I wasn't even considering that that was channeling. I guess just because I never took a course or whatever. And so I wasn't labeling it as something because I wasn't trying to do something specific. But I guess just like being able to get into that mindset or whatever of where you can start talking to your higher self kind of, or whether that's, whether you're interpreting that as channeling or talking to your higher self or pulling something from the Akashic records, like however you interpret, getting your mind to settle down and just like closing your left brain off basically and kind of opening up the right brain to kind of like reach out and see if there's something out there. Um, yeah, that's really what started. So that 2012 experience for me changed everything. And yeah, so I guess the trajectory would be like skipping all the ghost stuff and just like not even concerning myself and thinking that was just like ridiculous to be scared of things or thinking that something was coming or especially being scared of it. And I don't know why I was scared of it for so long, but yeah, I would say that I was more interested in communication because I felt like they left without me and left me there. And I couldn't explain all the things that were happening. So I think my main thing is like, I want to be able to talk to them because I feel like there was something there that was talking to me or, like whatever, because when I got the message that it was like scanning me, like whatever that felt like was something that it was reading my mind basically. So like the short form or whatever, right? So that was something. It knew who I was. It was getting information from me. I didn't think those thoughts in my head came from it, but whatever that was meant I was going back to try to do that. Like I was going to try getting information of who they were, what that experience was. And I wanted to get there. And I guess I was just um, doing like a QHHT course at the time. I was like studying um, to be able to do Dolores Cannon's like regression therapy, QHHT. And at the same time, I was trying to learn how to get out of my body, how to do the, body awake, body asleep, mind awake, and trying to roll out of my body. So I was trying to be doing like astral traveling at the same time that I was learning QHHT. So both of those aspects was kind of trying to get out of this reality, right? Trying to separate out of your body to like, I was reading the Bob Monroe books at the time, Far
yeah.
Journey, or, all three of them, but the Far Journey one I was reading, and I love that book where he was talking about like going out of his body and talking to, I think he was calling them like AA and BB. Like there was no names for these two beings that he was encountering every night, but they were like basically bringing him around the earth and showing him lineup. I can't really remember, but it was something like that, showing him lineups of people trying to wait to get bodies to reincarnate into the earth. But these two like different points of consciousness that he was talking, like that he was traveling with or whatever through the universe, basically, didn't have names. So I think he called them like AA and BB or whatever. And I was like, holy, like, I want to do that. How do you do that? So I think my whole point was like, QHHT is just like a self hypnosis. Like I was trying to use it for self hypnosis because I wanted to be able to talk to my higher self, like Dolores Cannon was always saying. She was regressing people and she was talking to their higher selves. And I thought, I don't want to rely on some person and to regress me and have to keep paying to get one little like spurt of information back. I want to talk to my own higher self and I want to be able to record it because this is what I want to do. So getting out of the body and like talking to this, like these points of consciousness and trying to get information or get them to show you how the world really works, and trying to talk to my own higher self like Dolores Cannon was doing, to try to like, I don't know which, if it's like the ET thing or the like higher self thing. I was just trying to do both things just to figure out how to do something to try to interact with something, right? So that was kind of my like focus and what I wanted to do to try and figure out what that thing, what that experience was, why I was seeing so many things, and to try getting some answers, I guess, getting some answers in general. So I never used the word channeling at that time. I never thought I was channeling. That was not, even though I'd known about Seth and Bashar, like I was at that time, I was following Bashar, but this was not what I thought I was doing, had nothing to do with that. I thought those two specific things. I wanted to get out of my body and go meet some being that could like take me around the world like it was doing to Bob Monroe, or I wanted to talk to my higher self so I could get some answers, even just on my own life, or like my oversoul or whatever that could see, where the best form of the future Desta, what she was going to do, so I could kind of like latch on and make my life a little bit better. So my goal or my motivation or whatever was not what ended up happening, which was channeling, but that's stemmed from that original like close encounters, just to try to be able to now communicate with something. Like, how do you make your brain go down? How do you meditate enough that you could do this? How do you get into that mind space? How do you communicate with something? That was my
And
focus.
yeah, and do you have a particular process nowadays or that you've cultivated over time or you experiment with to do that kind of work?
Yeah. In those days, I didn't. In those days, it was just really a meditation. I've just done it so many times now. It's really easy for me to do. Um, Maybe the interesting part of, again, how my mind changes every couple of years kind of thing is, and funny because I just wrote a psychic abilities book. So I literally just at the beginning of this year, I broke my leg. I was in bed for six months, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even hardly get to the bathroom. So I was like really in bed and did nothing for 12 hours a day except for, research a bunch of stuff and start writing some books. But the first one I wrote was the psychic abilities. And so the funny thing is that was just, published in, I don't know what, May or March or something like that. And even from what that whole book is based on is like the part of meditation that I think that I go to in the quiet mind to be able to channel. And this is only a couple of months later. I already have a new theory of how I actually get there, even though I just wrote that whole book. Like said that, after my whole life of research, this is what I think it is. And now 3 months later, I already think it's something different. But yeah, so I used to think it was kind of just that, like just quieting your mind and shutting down your left brain, opening your right brain, and just trying and just listening. That's the bait for me. Channeling is just that, and that's really as easy as it is, except it's not easy because most people can't stop thinking. Never mind the really hard part is the difference of meditating and just sitting in the nothingness and listening. So that is such a really hard part to talk about or to teach or whatever, but that's the hard part. But if you do it long enough, you can do it. Anyone could do it. Channeling is like very easy but that's what you're doing is it's just you're changing from sitting there with your brain closed, thinking that you're just sitting there in peace. Don't think like a normal, like the 70s meditation is, right? Is just like stop the monkey mind, which just means like don't think about anything. So you're basically like punishing yourself every time. No, don't, no, stop, stop, stop. That's what it is. That was my old meditation routine kind of thing. And now well, it's easier to get into that place. And I know if I can do it or not, because I can tell if I can shut my mind up. I can tell, even if it's in the middle of the day, sometimes I'll channel because I just feel like, oh, I can tell that I'm like exhausted, not thinking, don't have a million things going in my head. And that's the perfect time because now to get to that further down, further shut off left brain is going to be really easy because I already can hardly think. So it's just like
Yeah.
an exhausted state of mind kind of. So I really thought that this was how I was connecting, is getting to this very specific quiet place in my mind. But now this book that I've been researching, this gate program, it's crazy that now I actually don't think that that's what it is. So I don't think that's what it is. I think it's a dissociative trait or ability. So now, and I now think that that is how all these things happens, is a dissociation. So I think that remote viewing, so I didn't think this literally months ago, but and so it's like two different ways of talking about something, I think. So like for the UFO community to be, now tied into the paranormal community, I'm sure, like even 5 years ago, people that believed in UFOs, and I know a lot of them, don't believe in, it's a little bit different today in 2025, but even 5 years ago, never mind 10 or 20 years ago, no one thought those two things were connected. And ufologists would not think that ghosts and seances, and they would think that that's total shit. And if someone was like going to seances and trying to connect with their dead relatives, mediums and everything, would not believe in UFOs. Like those the things weren't even related. And now I think that the thing that ties it together, instead of thinking what psychic abilities are really doing, is centering on meditation and quieting the mind, or shutting down the left brain specifically. I actually think now that it's dissociation. I think it's all an ability to dissociate, whether it's a learned ability or like you had your dissociation. So that's what happened to you too when you had that experience, right? So I had a couple spontaneous out of body experiences when I was a child as well, and again, I just thought at that time that they were just totally spontaneous, like, but they were trauma induced, and and I thought, I didn't even think that the trauma induced part, I didn't even think that at the time. I just thought, I don't know why it popped out at those two times. But now, again, doing more research and looking at something from a totally different perspective, and instead of looking at all this stuff as specifically psi abilities and like psychic research, I actually think now it's dissociation. It's like a psychiatry kind of term, like dissociative identity disorder. It's like how, and a lot of that is trauma induced, right? And like just like trauma-based mind control. So that's what my book is about. And now that I've been really, really, really looking into that and looking into dissociation, which MK Ultra was looking into, the CIA obviously is looking into, and a lot of psychiatrists have been looking into, is dissociation. And I think dissociation is where, when you can dissociate, that is where you can then enter the like realm or the portal or whatever that then allows you to be able to access these psychic abilities or experiences or whatever. I think it's like getting out of your, and I never would have used any of those terms or words or thought about it like that before. But now that I do, now I think that that's what the whole thing is. I think that's what I think the government knows, for sure, from those experiments and why they were doing Project Stargate and why they were looking into all this stuff. I don't even think it's psychic abilities. I think that the whole thing is broken down to, if you can get someone to dissociate, they're more likely to be able to have an ESP experience or remote viewing or whatever.
Yeah, and it's so funny. It's like it's staring us right in the face, right? In popular entertainment, and with like Stranger Things, right?
Yeah.
It's like so popular. People it I guess maybe the part of the idea rings true to people, right? And Stranger Things is, they say it's loosely based on the Montauk Project, but I think it's actually more than just that. It seems like there's a lot of like indicators. There's other like theories that are kind of thrown in the Stranger Things mythos. But You mentioned the GATE program. So for people who have maybe only just heard of that, like, what is the GATE program?
So the
And
gate.
how does that tie into MK Ultra, dissociation, psychic phenomena?
So that's a big, I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember all that, but so the big part of it and the reason, okay, so the GATE program is the Gifted and Talented Education Program. So that is what it's called. It's called other things like TAG and other things in America and in Canada, where I'm from. They we never called it that. They like we just called it the like I just heard of it as the enrichment program. So I was in the enrichment program, and ours we were just broken up into color groups, right? They were trying to make sure that the other kids would never know who was in, like as if that didn't, everyone still knew like what group that they were in, kind of, but they were trying to do it in color groups, in my school at least, to not let people know who the smart kids were, who the medium kids were, and who the, the not smart kids were. And so I knew that I was in the smart kid class. We had to do lots of tests and everything in school. And I'm going to try and make this not a super long story. So that's the GATE program. It's an enrichment program. Kids were in an elementary school, and really just in the, like I said, I was in bed for the entire winter, this winter, and had a lot of free time on my hands. So I randomly just like read or heard a couple things where people were talking about the GATE program, and I had never heard of that because we didn't call it that here. And I read a couple videos, and then or watched a couple of videos, and then I guess I started going like, oh shit, that's the same thing that we had in Canada, but I don't think it was called GATE. Like I just know it from, the Green Group or whatever. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who I'm still friends with from grade 2, that I was in the program, like I was in the
Enrichment.
group with.
Yeah, yeah.
And the weird thing, because I have almost no memory of it. So I have a terrible memory, but I have almost no memory of my childhood at all. Like none. If I see a picture, I know the couple minutes around when the picture was taken because I've looked at the picture 100 times, but I don't have really any, and I never have. So my friends have always been like, oh, Desta never remembers anything. So I have to call my friends that live all over the States and Canada to say, like, what happened when we were in, grade whatever with whatever. I don't know anything, and all my friends know that. So I don't have a good memory of that. But I do know I was in the class. Like I do know that I was in, the smart class because I hated school and I was super bored all the time. And you know, we were doing this class, and I don't have no memories of the class except for a couple really weird things that, again, if I were to have remembered them 5 years ago, I don't even know that I would have thought they were that weird because I never thought that deeply into them or something. So now that I'm reading all these things online about people talking about the gate, and I'm like, oh, damn, that's what I was in. And some people saying that I have a good memory of childhood, but no memory of the gate program. And I thought, well, that's weird because I have no memory of most of my childhood, but I really have no memory of the gate program. And so I started like listening to what they're saying, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember that. I do remember that. I do remember that. I had a bunch of really crazy synchronicities, like really crazy, that happened right at the time that I was watching these videos, that I thought, holy shit, there's no chance that this would have ever happened. Like, this is a weird sign. And then another one, and then another one, all within like 1 week in March-ish or February or whatever. Like within a week, there were such big things that I thought, oh my God, I have to start writing this down. Like, I never thought it was going to be a book, but I thought, this is insane. Like, someone is telling me that I have to be writing this down because there's no chance that would have happened. So I wrote a bunch of stuff down, and was looking into it, and kind of like and I called my mom and said, like, do you remember when I was in the program? My mom says, I don't remember anything about your childhood except for that one day when you were really young, and she didn't remember what grade I was in. And she said, when you were terrified and you were screaming and hysterical and saying you're never going back to school again. And I was trying to calm you down. I tried to ask you what was wrong, and you wouldn't tell me. And then, I locked myself in the bathroom. I remember locking myself in the bathroom and being really scared of going back to school, but I don't remember what it was for. I don't remember how old I was. I just remember I was like really young, like 6 or 7 or 8 or something. And my mom says that that's one of the only things she remembers about my childhood, is that, and that she talk to my grandma and drop me off at my grandma's to try to get my grandma to pull out of me why I was so scared. And my grandma said she couldn't. So my mom ended up letting me stay home from school for the week. And then the following week, she went and stood at the back of the class to see like what I was so petrified of, and nothing happened. So she just made me keep going back to school, kind of thing. And then I had a crazy phone call from a cousin of mine that I don't normally talk to. I probably spent 30 years not talking to her. And then all of a sudden she called during this time. And I just mentioned one weird thing to her. And then she said, do you remember when we were like with, my grandma and grandpa, do you remember we had a party at your house for grandma and grandpa's like anniversary or whatever? And we were in the schoolyard and you told me you were in this class and you were really scared and they told you that you can't tell your parents anything about it. And I'm like, no, I do not remember that at all. And I couldn't believe she was saying it because I did not front load her with that this was any of this was happening. It was just, what's the chance? I don't talk to her ever, like not even every 30 years. Like I just don't normally talk to her, and I haven't for decades. And then she just brings this random thing up. So we figured out when my grandma and grandpa's anniversary was, and it was in 1979. I was in grade 2. And most of these kids said that they were in the GATE program between grade 2 and 5. And now all of a sudden I have a random call from my cousin saying this, and my mom saying that I was really scared, and my cousin saying, yeah, you told me that the things that they were getting you to do in class was levitation. They were getting you to try and move objects with your mind, levitate things, and like read people's minds, or like they had those Zener cards, right? So
Yeah.
everyone's talking about the Zener cards. And I thought, holy shit, I have no memory of this. And the fact that she's remembering it for me is like my one link of kind of like something happening and someone having a memory at least, and placing it at an age, placing it at a, grade level. And yeah, so I thought, wow, like maybe something weird did happen. It's not just that I have no memory and the few memories I have are really weird, but I was really young and I don't have a good memory. So like, I can't tell if I made them up, kind of thing. But now I was starting to go, wow, things are lining up with what other people are saying online about this program. And so, yeah. So anyways, that's a long story, but so that's how I kind of got into looking into it. And then I started looking in, and then all these other synchronicities piled up where it was other things that I added to the book that were just like such bizarre but gigantic parts of the book that just all happened within this one week, that I started thinking like, this is something crazy is happening here. And whatever they were doing had something to do with a program. They were testing us for something. And then, just for one more second, because the main thing that really did all of this is the Jake Barber interview with Ross Coulthart. So I had already watched that. Again, it came out in like April or May or March or whatever. And I'd watched it and never thought anything of it. And then when I was looking at these gate things, I saw a clip of it, and someone clipped it and showed the part where Jake Barber said he was in the gate program, and that his dad, his grandfather, both of his grandfathers were military, and his grandpa that was in the Navy, I don't know if it was Navy intelligence, but he was a naval grandpa. He was also the ambassador in his area to the gate program. And Jake was in the gate program. And then Ross said to him, do you think that, well, he said, do you know that a lot of people that they might have been scouting for psi abilities or like psychic potential or whatever in the gate program? Because I've heard that from other people. And Jake said, yeah. And Ross said, do you think that had anything to do with your interaction, like your telepathic interaction with the craft, like with the egg craft that he was carrying? And he said, yeah. And then I thought, oh my God, this is it. So this is for sure the link now, that someone with that's like hooking in the telepathic or the psychic ability part of it, and it's hooking in the gate program to being, not necessarily, and I'm not, obviously I don't know Jake Barber, but it's like hooking it into naval intelligence or intelligence, military, possibly being involved somehow with the gate program and with psychic abilities, and with them maybe following people or kind of helping guide them to their future position, which of course would be military intelligence, some kind of psychic programs, something like that. So that was really, those things really started cementing like, oh, I have to write something around all this because this is crazy.
And the thing is, it's not even like, oh, this kind of application is just within the United States because, different countries all were scouting the youth actually for psychic ability. And I do think that there is something to be said about kids being more open, less conditioned, um, and their senses and psychic perception more open at a younger age. There was a book I've referred to on a few times on here. You can find it on the internet now. It was impossible to find years ago. It was called China Super Psychics
Oh yeah, I have that book.
by Paul Dong, and Drunvalo Melchizedek highlights it in some of his books and lectures. And the kids in China, and they have a very large population, so they had a large like pool of potentials to tap from, right? And so Paul Dong was a Qigong master who was investigating UFOs, high strangeness of psi in China. And again, in China, they had these kids that were reading with blindfolds, right? And like the stuff we're seeing now, right? And of course, we saw that was in Germany. There were the kids that were reading with blindfolds, and I think in the Soviet Union and Russia, there was like all these similar kind of testing. And again, with adults, yes, exceptional adults, but most definitely with the youth. So that comes as no surprise. And so with that, with telepathy and psi phenomenon and maybe skillfully cultivating disassociation to tap into those potentials, how does that factor into the UFO phenomenon?
Oh, good one. Well, I mean, I'm not using anything in the book that has to do with the UFO phenomena because I'm trying to target it to just other people that were in the GATE program to try figuring out, what they were doing. We actually put a survey on our website so I could get more information for people that were in the program so I could like kind of look through them myself because I have my own little theories now that I've researched and almost finished this book. And so I'm not I even the Jake Barber thing, that was a big thing for me because I'm part of the UFO community and because that the telepathy that he felt with that thing, that was my main focus after the my thing left, is trying to communicate with it. And the telepathy of it saying to me, like, don't worry, we're not going to do anything. And we're just scanning you is like, again, at the time, I thought it was me. After, of course, I didn't think that. And even when I thought that, I thought, why would I even think that? Like, what a weird thing. But then I just like brushed it off. So the telepathy with anything. So, okay. So first, if it's a simulation, which is kind of where closer that I am seeing everything is anyways, then there is no difference between if it's a ghost or an ET or a whatever. Telepathy or your pet, telepathy in general is like a state of mind or like an area that you can access, that people can access by different means, and depending on your view or your perception of what exactly psychic abilities are and your perception, I guess, of just basically everything, because my perception has changed, but I guess it doesn't really matter. You could take a class and still figure out how to do it. So I would say now that I am interested in UFOs, and the Jake Barber story was a big one for me to cement putting in a book. But for other people that were just being tracked by the say intelligence community, of course, there's no proof that it was the CIA that was funding this, but I try and link in all the other programs that they were funding that are exactly the same
Yeah.
as the gay program. So it's like for me, the for sure was them. But of course, I'm not going to publicly say that. So it's just, there's no proof that they
Yeah.
were doing it, but they were doing Project Talent. Project Talent was almost the same thing that the gate program was in the 60s, where they went and they tested 440,000 like teenagers, like high school students, and for the same thing, for like intelligence levels, but also for personality types and creativity, leadership. And psychological resilience is one of the things I read, which is interesting because that's kind of weird. Even the leadership thing is that's kind of weird. Why were they testing for that? But they were doing that in the 60s. And there was a sub project in MK Ultra called Sub Project 136, and that was the big ESP experiment in 1961. So where they knew that dissociation accompanied ESP, and they were testing psychotics, children, and mediums in this one heavily redacted, so you can't get all the information. But in this one sub project, that was the ESP sub-project where they were saying it was dissociation, children, of course, MK Ultra, they were testing a lot of drugs, and hypnosis, to split personalities and stuff. But again, that whole thing and all of MK Ultra really, to me, is centered around dissociation, and splitting kids is easier because kids will dissociate much easier because they're younger. They're like, more apt to run and hide out of their mind in one, especially trauma based. So in MK Ultra, especially trauma induced. But in the GATE program, I think it was exactly the same. And they were testing us for the same things that they were doing in Project Talent 10 years earlier. And one of the main things that most people remember from the GATE program is that they were testing us with tones. And the Monroe Institute, you probably know, in the Gateway process, Stargate program, and the GATE program is just like, why are they using GATE for me? And especially because GATE is like the gateway into the psychic realm. Clearly, it doesn't say that anywhere, but clearly it's the portal. It's the portal into the mind that they were trying to induce some kind of dissociation into the kids to see if they can then tap into the ESP part. So and this is happening at the exact same time that Project Stargate is happening in like the beginning of the 70s, right? So the crazy thing is that at this time, so like I was in it in the like late 70s, but in the mid 70s, when the GATE program started, was also when Stargate started. It was the Stargate program started. It was when the Monroe Institute started. So they had just started using the binaural beats, trying to help get people out of their bodies. Those tones were trying to help induce a dissociation stage. And the people in the GATE program remember those tones being played, and they were just invented at that time. And the CIA clearly was funneling money into the Stargate program, trying to get ESP from people that were like, clearly when you do a remote viewing, just like anything else, just like channeling, you're splitting out of where your normal reality is, and you're splitting out of that and going into something where you're not connected to your own self, you're not connected to your own thinking patterns, you're getting out of that. So you're in a dissociative state, which is where you're able to view and like not really be connected to your normal brain and your normal thinking patterns or whatever, which is exactly what I do when I'm channeling. And I never really thought about that before, but anyway, so these tones were being played in the GATE program as well to all these children. So yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm at, is like these tones were being used to pull us out of our bodies, to dissociate, whether it was trauma induced as well. Like most people don't really remember what exactly was happening to us, but definitely we had the headphones. We were given a pink drink before we put the headphones on. And then I remember floating in the school, flying around the school. I still to this day of my elementary school have dreams of flying through the library. And we used to go to the library and there was never anyone there except for me and the two other people in the GATE program and the teacher. And we would have nap time in the library, lying on the floor in the middle of the day. And there was never anyone else. That I don't know if she locked the door behind us or I don't know what it was, but there was never anyone there except for us three kids, the teacher, and my memories are just of floating, flying. And so like it took a couple months for me to like get all these things together, but so that's what it was. We had the headphones, we were listening to the gateway process, we were dissociating, splitting out of our bodies, being able to float around, fly around, get out of our bodies. And it was like an induced dissociation. So possibly not trauma induced, but why the reason that I would link it to MK Ultra is because they were memory erasing people, obviously, like horribly psychic driving, reprogramming, repatterning people with like horrible, horrible experiments, and literally erasing people's entire childhoods and half of their lives where they still, were never able to get those memories back. So it's just weird to me why we were given a pink drink when I was 10 years old in grade 5. Why would the teacher say, here, drink your juice? Like, and then why would we say nap time in the middle of the day when I'm 10 years old? Why were we in the library by ourselves? Like, why do I remember and still have dreams about flying around the library or flying around the school or leaving the school late at night or whatever? It's like a lot of really weird fragmented memories, which is what if the pink drink had some kind of drug in it or some kind of, I don't know what in it, but if it had something in it and that's the reason we can't remember, then and we were being used to get out of our bodies and to dissociate by listening to these tones. I mean, it all really makes sense, and it sounds maybe crazy, but a lot of the people online have the exact same experiences. We all were using the Zener cards. We were all trying to do these same things, right? Guess the next thing, move a ball on the table. So why would they be doing that to kids that were like, I started in grade 2. So I was like 7 years old, 7 years old. Why would they be getting 7-year-olds giving these crazy tests and then getting them to do things like this? Like, yeah.
And so you have a book coming out on this?
Yes.
What is the title and when is it coming out?
It's called MK Ultra for Children, The Hunt for Psychic Abilities in the GATE program. I don't, it's 99% done. So maybe I'd say in about a month. A
Yeah.
month from now.
Yeah. And you know, I know it's you can't really determine it, but do you how far do you think they got with the program or
Well, I know that so Project Talent, that one in the 60s where they were testing 400,000 people, they followed those people for decades. So those students were followed for decades. They data mined all that information of their tests and everything into, well, I guess I don't know if this is like confirmed, but what everyone says is that of course the people that the organization, I think it's called AIR, AIR, I forget what it stands for, but that organization that made Project Talent and collected the information is an organization that works with the government and intelligence for other projects. So I guess that's kind of where the link comes in, is that clearly they were following these kids for decades. And I guess what people are assuming then is that it's like DARPA, intelligence, CIA, the DOD were going into that data and trying to follow these people and then maybe get them following them to see whoever tested the highest or whatever, and the people that they want that displayed the characteristics that they were looking for or whatever, but they were following the people for decades. And so the assumption, I guess, is that if they were doing that and that's documented for Project Talent in the 60s, then clearly, in the 70s when they found out about MK Ultra and they tried to destroy all the
yeah.
documents.
Yeah.
So they say it stopped in like in the early 70s and 73, and this GATE program came up around 73. So clearly that's how the government works, and it just like goes underground, changes hands, changes names. They say they're not doing it anymore and they're just doing it under a different name or a different way that people can't track that they're still doing it. So of course, I don't know how far it got or whatever, but a lot of the theories, there are some crazy theories online, but there's definitely theories where people think that they were either that in the GATE program that they were either like classified or whatever as compliant or non-compliant, like as kids while in the GATE program, and that once you were tagged with that compliant or non-compliant, the compliant people. And I even heard a whistleblower who said she was in Project Monarch, Dr. Oh my God, I already forget her name, Angle, I want to say. And and I heard her saying that from MK Ultra, that she says that everyone that's in charge of anything basically, but especially government judges, police, like the tops of everything, or people that were in MK Ultra. And I thought that was really interesting because that's kind of where this is going. Is if they were tracking everyone from talent, then just say they were tracking everyone from the GATE program. And if they were putting people into two different categories, compliant and non-compliant, then what people online are saying is that the compliant people have kind of been helped their whole life, kind of been like, oh, I just got an offer from this university to go teach there, or from, whatever. So they were kind of helped throughout their lives. Some people even say that they weren't given like speeding tickets or different tickets, or let go and in very weird circumstances, and kind of like helped throughout their lives. And the people that were non-compliant were kind of the opposite. They were kind of made to not ever get into high ranking positions because they were the people that were not going to go along with, whoever the real people that control, the most things are, or whatever the real people that are controlling things, because they were, pinged as children as being non-compliant. So who knows if that's true? That's just one of the theories. But I guess that's what a lot of people think, is that the GATE program is split into two different groups of people, the compliant and the non-compliant. And just very randomly, like the two other people in my class fit like so crazily fit into all of these really crazy conspiracies that people are saying, but it's exactly my experience of what happened in my little group. And that's again why I was just so I couldn't believe that it was something that, was kind of gaining momentum, I guess, in social media, the GATE program, because I have the exact same the experience as everyone else is having. So it's more believable for me, because even though it sounds kind of crazy, some of it.
Well, I mean, highly controversial to say the least. And now, of course, we know that within a few months, uh, allegedly, the Scott Andrews book is supposed to be coming out, and that's going to, I think, reinvigorate interest into the GATE program and everything that goes along with that. Um, but we're about at time now. Desta, I definitely am gonna have you back on. And also we're gonna do something with Grant as well. I'm looking forward
Yes.
to that. And so where can people connect with you? Where can people find your work and maybe find you online, get in touch with you?
Well, the books are all Grant's books and my books are all on Amazon everywhere in the world. And our website, which is our YouTube videos, and there's a contact information page on there too, is mysterialuna.com.
Okay. So it's been great talking to you, and I look
Thanks,
forward to talking
James.
to you again soon, Desta.
Me too. Thanks, James.
All right, take care.
Thanks.